So, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning in Akash's case. My name is Fariha Rahman, and I'm the student convener of this program and MBA final year student of Aligarh Muslim University, Malappuram Center. So, I'll moderate this program as well. I hope you're having a great day. So, Department of Business Administration, AMU-MC, welcomes you to this international webinar on the topic Entrepreneurship and Mindfulness with Mr. Akash Mehta. And now I would like to invite the convener of the program, Mr. Shafiqur Rahman KV, the assistant professor and the coordinator of our department, to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Fariha. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those who are in the time zone, especially in the Western time zone, especially Akash from Paris. So good morning to them. I'm Shafiq Rahman, Assistant Professor and the Coordinator of Department of Business Administration, Aligarh Muslim University, Malappuram Center in Kerala. We have participants from India and abroad. As a convener of this program, I welcome you all to this international webinar on entrepreneurship and mindfulness, organized by Department of Business Administration, Aligarh Muslim University, Malappuram Center. I don't want to take much of your time. We have a great personality with us today. He's a great entrepreneur. And he's one among the Forbes under 30 list. Is none other than Mr. Akash Mehta. He is a CEO and the founder of Akash Agency and the co-founder of one of the hair wellness brand, that is Fable and Mane, which is based in the Paris. So before welcoming him, I would like to express my sincere gratitude on behalf of our entire AMU fraternity for accepting our invitation and being with us today for the program. Thank you, Akash. Thank you for being with us. I wholeheartedly welcome Mr. Akash Mehta for this session. We have Dr. Faisal KP, the director of Aligarh Muslim University Malappuram Center with us. He's busy and he's going to somewhere, and out of his busy schedules, he is joining with us while he's traveling. Thank you, sir, for sparing your valuable time for us. I welcome him for this session. I also welcome the whole fraternity of AMU Center Malappuram, including teaching and non-teaching staff, students, and especially the student convener, Ms. Fariha, for this session. I welcome you all. Last but not the least, we have participants across the world, from the Middle East, from India, from the Middle East, and from the European countries. We have students and faculty members from other institutions as participants. We have budding entrepreneurs and the business peoples across the world. I welcome you all to this session. And I wish, and I'm sure, this session will be really meaningful and thought-provoking, and above all, beneficial to you all. Thank you. Over to you, Fariha.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. So I think Faisal KP sir is traveling right now and he won't be able to give the inaugural address. So we'll move forward with Akash. So finally, I would like to invite the guest speaker for today, Mr. Akash Mehta. Akash, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you for the introduction, Fifuku, and the kind words. Really appreciate it.
Excuse me, Fariha. Faisal,
yes,
Dr.
sir.
Faisal KP is on the line. So let's inaugurate it and we can start it.
Okay, good.
So Faisal KP sir would be giving the inaugural address.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hello. Good afternoon to all. I'm Dr. Faisal KP, the Director, AMU Malappuram Center. Here, Fariha Rahman, the coordinator of the program, and Mr. Shafiqur Rahman sir, the Assistant Professor, Department of Business Administration, and the coordinator of the department. And respected Akash Mehta, the resource person of the program. First of all, let me express my heartfelt, sincere gratitude to Akash Mehta for accepting the invitation of the Department of Management Studies. And I take it as a great honor and privilege for the entire AMU Malappuram Center to have organized these programs and to have a wonderful and inspiring personality like Akash to be with us and to give insightful and inspiring thoughts with regards to entrepreneurship and mindfulness. And I appreciate the department for having organizing the program and to have selected the topic, which is very timely, and also to have chosen a perfect and the suitable resource person to deal with the topic also. Don't want to prolong, as we all know, entrepreneurship and mindfulness. The topic is to be and handled by one of the great personalities and emerging entrepreneur, Mr. Akash Mehta. Without going to detail, we can say one thing that the entrepreneurship is all depends upon the one's ability to deal with the all uncertain situations, and without mindfulness, and that is not possible. And the uncertainties and the problems which are actually the twin sisters and brothers of the business enterprises. So I think Akash Mehta sir will be dealing with all the aspects of that. And with these few words, I once again express the gratitude and thanks on behalf of the AMU Malappuram Center as the director and the head of the institutions. I appreciate all the participants and the organizers, and above all our resource person Akash Mehta sir. And with this few words, I declare this program to be inaugurated. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words and your support. Now, moving forward, over to you, Akash.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the kind words. Great, so it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to discussing further about entrepreneurship and mindfulness as a key topic. I will just make, we'll just keep us two, right? It'd be simpler, yeah? Perfect. So, do you have any questions to begin with, or should I just explain my journey to begin with? What's the best way to begin?
We would love to know your journey, because like you started it at only age 22 and like you're 26 and doing so great. So we would love to know your journey, Akash.
Absolutely. So I'm Akash. I'm Indian. My mom is born in Pune, from a Marathi family, but my dad is Gujarati, but born in Africa, Uganda, and they came to London, and I was born in London. But growing up, it's been an incredible experience here. But having said that, there's been a lot of challenges being an Indian in Britain, and that's made me a lot more stronger and resilient to work harder. I think I got that from my father, who's a successful businessman, specifically in the beauty industry, in the fragrance industry. And he came with really honesty, like they say $50 in your pocket, you come to London, and he made a big business from just this. So I think from a young age, I had my father as an inspiration for me to strive to, work hard always. In school, I was very much a study person. I just knew the value of studying and the value of higher education, like how you all are today at a very prestigious university in India. It's very important. But it's very important to understand that the degree you choose in university doesn't necessarily mean the thing you're going to do in life. It's the lessons you learn at university. It's the people you meet. It's the professors that teach you. That's what builds you. So I just want to make clear that if people are still not sure what they want to do in life, that's absolutely normal, because that's not necessarily the role of university. The role of university is to build you. But education and studying is fundamentally one of the most important things in my life, that's helped me today in entrepreneurship. So in school, I was very good at math and physics. So the natural progression was to study engineering. That was just where my path went to. And I did 4 years at Imperial College London, doing electrical electronic engineering. But at the same time, I was very much interested in music. So after my lectures and my studying, I would go to the studio and I would sing. And I would just be like a musician slash engineer. That was my day. Um, and that was my passion, but studying was my way of life back then. But I realized very early on, with music, there was a new rise of social media and digital, and my producer at the time told me, Akash, you have to start working on your Instagram following and your Facebook following, because that's what's going to help you as a musician. The more followers you have, the more you can sell your music. So at that time, I started to work on my social media presence, posting videos, posting content, and I started to get a lot of followers for my music. And that was basically what I realized digital marketing I was quite good at without realizing it. But then when I finished my university, maybe like many of you today, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that engineering wasn't for me, and I knew that. So I said, okay, I'm glad I did the 4 years, albeit a very difficult 4 years, but I knew immediately that's not my path. All my friends, they were going into banking. They were getting very big salary jobs. They were getting the best opportunities. And I got offered in big banks, big jobs. But I really remembered the biggest lesson I learned in university. And I failed some exams, because when I really started to understand, okay, I had some failures. What is these failures meaning? And for me, those failures meant an opportunity for further success. But I had to really look at those failures and understand, why am I failing? Because this is not necessarily the path for me. This is not what I'm naturally going to succeed in life. So if I didn't learn from that, then I would make more and more mistakes. So I said to myself, is banking and finance my passion? Is it something I want to spend my life in, or is it what society is telling me that is good? If you're a banker, then you will be successful. So I decided, no, I didn't take the job, and I took an unpaid internship in Estée Lauder in the beauty industry. So all my friends after engineering were earning $100,000 a year, and I was earning zero. So a lot of people were kind of questioning me and saying, Akash, what are you doing? And I said, if I don't do what I enjoy, I will not be happy. But if I'm happy at what I work on, I will have success much quicker than everyone else, because I'm passionate, and it's no longer work, it's my life. And I will not make sure my life is everything but a success. So that's why I would propel quicker. So I ended up working there, and I ended up realizing that my music experience in digital marketing was very useful for my place in Estée Lauder. So within 1 month, I managed to convince someone in the company to get me promoted to social media manager, which at that time was very new. And I was the youngest manager ever in the world in Estée Lauder companies, which is, a big company, at 21 too at that time. So it showed like, okay, I was an engineer, I was an intern, and then within 1 month in the company, I moved. So I used it as a stepping stone, but I knew it was temporary unless I proved my worth. So I had to work really hard inside to show why I'm worth that position. But I also realized, with that opportunity now to be the youngest manager, I could use that to kickstart my career. So I made sure I would never stop learning and growing, because of what society told me. Because society told me, no, you're too young to be a manager at 21. Or at 25, you still have to be an intern. Or you still have to be a student. And I think rules are meant to be individual to everyone. So if you know in your heart that you can do it, try to be the first to change the industry. I wanted to go into the companies I worked in, and I said, if age is a problem, then I don't want to work here. If my ability in my work is not good and my level of quality of the work, then I understand. But if I produce a piece of work and someone says, it's great, but you're too young, for me, my response was, but what are you basing experience on? Is experience time? Because for me, experience is not linear. Experience is a wave. And in 1 year, someone can learn and experience more than someone else in a year. So you can't base it just on time. Time is generally a factor, but it's one factor of many. And that's what I had this mindset. So then after my career in Estée Lauder, I then went and I got an opportunity to work at Dior. And again, I was the youngest manager at Dior in the head office, working in Paris. And here, on my first interview with the CEO, I said, if my age is mentioned, I will quit Dior. And I also said, if I stop learning and doing, I will quit Dior. So I came here as like another university experience. I wanted to learn and learn and learn because that's what an entrepreneur is about. You know, I went into corporate. I didn't create my own company at the beginning, but I went into the corporate industry to get some good money because it's good to have some money to start your own company. Secondly, I went to learn to use it as my master's, my MBA. I wanted to use this as my further education, but I also used it as a way to understand what do I want to do in life. It gave me some time to figure out what is my business. But the minute I knew what my business was, I would quit. And that's what happened at Dior after 3 years. I loved it. I was offered a chief officer title at LVMH, which was the youngest ever chief officer in LVMH, but I turned it down because entrepreneurship for me was the most exciting path. To have your own company, to be your own CEO, for me was the best feeling in the world. But I needed to know what was my idea before I go into that. And I think with my sister, I found the perfect business partner. We both knew that Indian hair care is the best hair care in the world. I mean, people say Indian hair is the strongest, the most beautiful, the most thick. And when you come to the Western world, honestly, and even in India itself, we don't really use a lot of Indian hair products in the Western world. We have Moroccan oil, we have other products, but nothing with the beautiful ingredients of castor, amla, ashwagandha, dashmul doesn't exist. So we wanted to go on a mission to bring those Indian secrets to everyone in the world. And that's where Fable and Mane created. And now that's where I am today with Fable and Mane. And I'm very excited. We're the first Indian brand to launch at Sephora in the USA. We're the first sibling founded brand in Sephora. And we're expanding very quickly. We're talking to Nykaa in India, where it's a very exciting journey. And we just launched during coronavirus. So that's also been very exciting. But that's in a nutshell. And on the side, I have my digital agency because when I left Dior, they wanted me to continue working with them as a consultant. And then other companies started to come and I started to realize, oh, I can help a lot of people in digital marketing. So I have a second business. And I always say in life, you don't need to just do one thing. I don't like it when you look at a job and then they say, what's your profession? Or like you do a passport and they say, what's your profession? To me, I want to say, what's your professions? Why can't we have more than one, right? There's 24 hours in the day. And for me, it doesn't have to be 9 to 5. I like to work because why? Because I don't feel work anymore. I feel like I'm just learning and growing. I never say I work, I just grow. Because that's when you realize when you do something you enjoy in life, then you no longer work a day in your life. You just end up learning and growing. So that's a little bit about me to give some context. And now I would love to hear a bunch of different questions we can answer as you wish.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask one thing that you mentioned that experience is not everything. But right now we are applying for jobs and we are applying for different companies and every company is asking for experience, at least 2 to 3 years or more. So what should we do about that?
This is something where, for sure, I think experience can still be manipulated. So, for example, for me, I never worked. I did a lot of internships, to be honest, but I never really worked in corporate before. And that's proven by the fact that I was only accepted as an unpaid intern, right? I didn't get a manager straight away. But I understood if I was good, if I get in the door any way possible, even if unpaid, even if it's just 1 week experience, then I prove myself in that time to validate a position because companies, unfortunately, are flawed. The HR systems aren't the best because I'll tell you this, at Dior, I applied for an internship around 4 times and I got rejected. A year later, they begged me to come as a manager. And then when I quit, they wouldn't want me to leave. And I said to them, like I applied 4 times and I never even got an interview. And now I'm one of the best employees you've had. That just shows that the system is flawed. So don't doubt yourself. It's a fact that unfortunately we're basing on a paper, which is a CV. But this is important, I understand. So experience
Yeah.
doesn't need to be just things that you're relying on another company. You can build your own experience. For example, if you are interested in digital marketing, if you can hear me now, if you are interested in
Right.
digital marketing, you can remember that you could potentially create your own social media channel or your own digital marketing channels and practice on your own, like how I did with my music. And I had a lot of experience with my music that then led me to get validation to be a social media manager, right? But that music experience, I didn't get hired by a company. I did it myself. So I controlled it. So if tomorrow you're applying for a job in, let's say, banking or something, get experience yourself. You can even create your own little company on the side. And then when you go to an interview, you can say, oh, I spent the last year and a half or last couple of months learning about trading. I know so much. Here's my experience. That's my best advice. But yeah, I know it is a shame. I just do hope in the future companies start changing as well, because I do feel an interview is so much more effective as an individual and not on a CV. I've personally hired my
Yeah.
people in my company, not based on specific experiences, but based on the individual. So I've made sure everyone I've hired, if they don't have experience in agency, that doesn't matter, because I'll make them experience. I'll train them. That's the whole point as me as the owner of the agency. But I first go by the person, personality, and the hard workingness. But many companies, unfortunately, yeah, they don't do that.
Yeah. So, so how difficult is it to work in the corporate world? Like, you have years of experience. How was it?
It was very interesting. That it was definitely an experience that made it. I learned the most, I think, in this corporate experience, because unfortunately, when you work in a big company, there's a lot of different personalities and sometimes a lot of egos. So you might be doing your perfect job, but people will still put you down because maybe they're jealous or you're doing better than them. So you have to learn in corporate to separate yourself from other people's perceptions. You can't control their own opinion, but never take it personally. Take it as an opportunity to educate them on why that's not the right way. So I found my success came from never interacting with the conflict. It's very easy in a corporate environment when, say, two people are same level and they want to get the same job for promotion. Always think of yourself as an individual. And I feel the best way for me was I never went to corporate wanting to stay there forever. I always knew that there was something after. So I always made sure every day was a new day and I would learn the most. But I could technically leave tomorrow or I could leave in 10 years. There wasn't necessarily a date in mind, but it wasn't my end game. Whereas a lot of people who go to corporate, they don't know what's their plan next. They get very involved and they get very obsessed, and it's very hard to grow and do more. So I think making sure your mindset is you're very carefully, thinking about how you are portraying yourself and not swaying away from that. Because in corporate, it's very structured and it's very specific. And unfortunately, you are one person in a pool full of many. So you have to play the cards correctly. But the other thing with corporate, I would definitely say, is to make sure that you are always working hard and you always try to be entrepreneurial in your job. I always made sure that I I really made sure that I wanted to be as entrepreneurial within my job to make sure that I changed the industry a little bit. Definitely. I think we should also maybe ask a few more questions to do with like students specifically and how their next steps. That would be really interesting. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we could take some questions.
yeah, there's some questions here. What do you think how market changes post-COVID as an entrepreneur? It's a very good question. So the market, the thing with the market today is it's definitely gone more online. We have to accept that. As today, we're not sure if how long the COVID will last and if there's going to be another wave. So many businesses are spending a lot of their, their budget on making their infrastructure online a lot stronger, because that's the best way to contact and sell a product to an individual. People might not be going outside as much. So making sure first your business is very digital, you have a strong e-commerce or online presence, social media is very, 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 very much relevant, but also making sure that your products are speaking specifically to the needs of people going forward. These topics could be wellness, making sure that we're focusing on your body, your inner self, being at home, education. People love to learn online now. Now universities and education might not be the same. You might not be able to have 10,000 people in one room. You might have to be more online like today.
Yeah.
That's definitely something. But I think businesses will also need to be very, very mindful of their spending, because now it's going to be very clear that some businesses will succeed further than others, but the majority of businesses today will not have the same revenue as before. So I think we got to be very mindful of our spending and how many people we have internally, and also how we structure the company. Because now, in the first time in many years, we are now seeing that working from home is very effective. We don't need to have an office of
Yeah.
people. I can now hire people in India, for example. And this is something that I'm also considering and I'm working on. And I would love, if anyone is interested in the future, to be in touch with me, because I can now hire people anywhere in the world. I don't need to be in London to work for my company. So hopefully for many people that are in
Yeah.
remote areas or not able to travel, maybe getting a job at Dior is no longer that difficult, because maybe they'll hire people for the working anywhere in the world. So I think that's a beautiful thing that's happened with COVID, is that sense of reactiveness and agility in working. Another question: is it advisable to start a startup right after undergraduation without experience? That's a very good question. I always say
Yeah.
this: it's very important when it works for a startup or a business, you'll never be ready. You just have to start. And that's very important. And I'll tell you why. When I was creating my company, it's always a risk. And you always doubt your experience. You always wonder, should I have a bit more? Should I work a few more years? Because you can always learn more, right? Fundamentally speaking, you will learn the most when doing the business from the beginning of day one, by just doing and learning and making mistakes. The amount of mistakes we made with Fable and Mane, where we chose the wrong supplier, we spent too much money, we paid for too much import taxes, the list goes on. The mask lid was broken and 1,000 units were damaged. This happens. But I wouldn't be able to learn that with experience working for a big company. I just learned that by doing. So I definitely feel like that is something that I wouldn't let you hold it back, but you must have the best idea and a strong idea and be fully passionate in it. I think the mistake is many people who do go straight into entrepreneurship and start their startup, they do it for the idea of entrepreneurship, and then they try to find a solution in the market and then make a product from that. It can work, but that's often what can fail. I think the ones that succeed the most is when you know you have an idea and then it forces you to create a startup. Like for us, we knew we had an idea with Indian hair care is not available in America and we were in UK. So we had the idea first and then the product came. So I think making sure you first understand after undergraduation, after you finish, do you really have that idea? If not, you can still work for a company in corporate, get more experience, and still start working on the business on the side. I worked for around 8 months while I was still employed on Dior on Fable and Mane. So I was already going to America for my lab. I took my holidays and my days off to work on Fable and Mane. And I would go after Dior, I would go to home and I would work on Fable and Mane. So in that way, I would say like you can be smart, and if you need some income, have both. But it's not necessarily a problem to start straight away. Another thing also, my CEO at Dior, he wanted to create a company and he told me, oh, I'm nervous. What should I do? So at that moment when I said, wow, there's me at 25 when I was leaving Dior, and there's my CEO who's a lot older and has so much experience, we were both on the same level. We both wanted to create a beauty brand, but we were both not necessarily sure how to start. So that made me comfortable to know that age is not relevant, experience is not necessarily relevant. It's important, but it just takes dedication going for it. So it's very important to know that. Another question. Do you think seeing the COVID situation, there will be less demand for the business management graduates in the coming years to work for corporate? I definitely do think now many companies, the big companies, will be more stricter in how many employees they hire.
Yes.
I think that's definitely something that will happen. However, I do think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think working for small companies, working for rising companies, which will be hiring more, is the new future. So I would just say, don't be too obsessed with the name of a company. I mean, like working for a big bank or Dior, it's great. But I think making sure you're understanding what is the experience you're going to get and what are you going to learn. Especially if your end goal is entrepreneurship, you don't need to have a CV to prove to anyone. The CV is for you and it's for your own learning. So, you could work for a big company in a big name and do paperwork and filing and Excel, not much experience. Or you could work for a smaller company and manage the whole marketing and learn a lot more. So that's very important to understand as well. But I do think, answering your question, I do think it's going to be a bit more difficult. So that's why working for yourself is not necessarily a bad choice right now, for sure. Another question. Am I okay, by the way, Farah, to just answer these questions, right?
Yeah.
How do you maintain the quality of your work given the current situation? Producing content has become difficult for agencies. How will the ecosystem deal with it? Absolutely. It's definitely difficult. I think you just have to amend. Right now, for example, for my agency, we just are now very selective of what services we're offering, and we adapt to the times. We also understand what the demand is. So right now, many people are wanting websites, they're wanting social media content, they're wanting influencer marketing. That's what I'm focusing on a lot more. But uh, if you're a perfectionist, you'll always try to maintain the quality of your work, and that's what I do. So, yes, the times are difficult, but it's getting better. And I do think it's also good for companies to rechange and grow their services and what they're offering. So I use it as an advantage, not necessarily a risk. Another question. If you had one piece of advice to someone just starting out, what would it be? And what would be the most important aspect he or she should focus on? So my biggest advice, this is going back to mindfulness, is making sure in your head that you are content with yourself. The entrepreneurial journey is very like corporate, it's full of ups and downs, a lot of stresses and a lot of wins, a lot of successes and a lot of failures. For me, I really understood quite early on in my life from meditation, from yoga, that mindfulness and the power of your mind is so important. For example, when you are down or you're upset, only you can change your own mind. You are in control of your own feelings. And usually speaking, in business specifically, when you are down, when you get a bad email or when you are upset, the only person that can then cause more damage is yourself. So you have to pull yourself out of that and move forward. So being aware of your own mind is the biggest advice I would say. And then secondly, making sure how you deal with failures. For me, when I have a failure, when I have a stress, I smile because I know A, I'll never make a mistake again, but B, I know I'm learning. It's uncomfortable, but I'm learning. And for me, learning is the biggest gift in life. So when I, for example, have an issue or some bad email comes, I read it. I initially start, maybe my heart starts beating, I get a bit upset. I take a minute away and I say, breathe, be mindful. And then I say, wow, okay, I'm never going to make this mistake again. Now let's focus on how to correct it. Now, once corrected, move on and learn. And it's so quick how you can be reactive. But if instead you read it and then you say, wow, I'm going to give up. I can't do this company. I don't want to continue working. That's what's going to be your biggest downfall as an entrepreneur. So that's very important, I would say. Very, very, very important. Another question. I think Farah is going to come back, hopefully. If the business doesn't work out, how should I move along to the next endeavor? So, if your business isn't necessarily working out and you're confused, I think there is an important factor to make sure, as being mindful, that you're listening to the business. If your business is losing more money than it's gaining and you know it's going to be very difficult, it's okay to say, great, let's park it on the side and let's focus on something else. It's not shameful, it's not embarrassing, it's being smart before it goes even worse and before it becomes even more expensive to yourself. So the most important thing to do at that point is to first say, I'm going to close it, but I'm going to first understand, what have I learned and what have I gained from doing that, to then in my next company I make sure it becomes stronger. And my sister is a perfect example. My sister, she never well, she had a few businesses before our business, Fable and Mane, and most of them, to be honest, she probably wouldn't like me to say this, weren't the best success. You know, while they looked good, they didn't make money, they lost money, and they didn't last longer than a year. But today, this business, she's learned from all those mistakes and has educated me on those mistakes. So now this new business is even stronger than before. So then you ask yourself today, would I want to, for example, would I want to have made sure I didn't make those mistakes? No, because those mistakes have made us who we are today. So, you know, using that as an example is very important, how to use that as the failure as a success for later on. But I also think not going too far away necessarily. If you know that the market that you were working on was good, but the product itself wasn't, try to just evolve it and amend it and adapt it first. And if that doesn't work, then start completely fresh. But sometimes, you know, there's easy ways to keep the infrastructure we built. Maybe there was a team, or maybe there was some investments, and then you can adapt it and mold it, not necessarily close it completely. So assess it depending on your business, but for sure. Another question, how has Instagram helped with your current business? It's a very good question. So honestly, today, Instagram has been one of the largest opportunity drivers for myself. I mean, I wouldn't have even been speaking in front of you guys today if it wasn't for my Instagram. I'm personally not very into this whole like social media, like influencing. It's not something that I'm necessarily, it's in my DNA. I was very shy growing up, but it's allowed me to become more confident, more sure of myself, and also to spread messages that are strong to myself. So for now, it's all about entrepreneurship, digital marketing, mindfulness. That's my whole Instagram. And I think that's the beauty of Instagram, is you can curate yourself and make it as a platform to access a lot of people that have similar interests. So as much as I'm helping people, my followers are helping me, you know, by learning from them and me teaching them. It's a perfect cycle. And in terms of my current business, it's definitely helped, because I wouldn't have probably got my job at Dior if it wasn't for my Instagram and my social media following, because it gave me the efficacy to say, wow, you have following, you know what to do in social media. You are an influencer. Can you do the same for us at Dior? You know, so that definitely helped. And for my business with Fable and Mane, of course, it helps from sales. It helps from brand awareness, and it gives also some credibility to the brand as well. So getting some followers on Instagram organically, don't buy, but just, you know, slowly take good content, push it out there, gain a small audience, and value the most importantly, put value on the audience, not the number, but the quality of the audience. I encourage everyone to start that journey, because we do live in an age where social media is so around us that soon in the future, job interviews will ask for your number of followers. It might happen, and this is why it's definitely important to leverage Instagram or other platforms like YouTube, etc. But find the platform that's relevant to you. For example, I won't go on TikTok, because for me, my message is all about business. So TikTok wouldn't be for me, but YouTube and Instagram are great platforms for myself. So that's important to understand which platform is right for your own messaging. How do you find your perfect co-founder? That's very good. So right now, you guys are at the prime point of your life where you are surrounded by like-minded students, you know, friends that you would now have for life. So even starting now and finding potential co-founders in your cohort is very much a good idea. I just chose my sister because I don't trust anyone but more than my sister. She's my blood and I love her. And we also are very different. So we actually kind of complement each other. I'm a workaholic. I sleep 3 hours a day and work a lot. And I'm a perfectionist, and she's the creative mind. She will work 4 hours a day, but it will be very, good ideas. So we work really well together for sure. I think that's important to also understand, to not have too many similarities, because you can butt heads. Having people have different skill strengths. Maybe one is very marketing, sales, one is very operational. But I would definitely recommend looking at your cohort today, and maybe finding the perfect co-founder with similar like-minded budding entrepreneurs. You spend the last years together, it could be a great opportunity. Or your siblings. If you can deal with not fighting, it can make you stronger. It can definitely make you stronger. It can also make you fight more, but that you have to control. But siblings are great founders as well. But also, I will say on that, try to always have at least something you're doing, or one company that's your own and completely yours. So I have my agency that's completely mine, and I have Fable and Mane, which is my sister. So I have the balance of not necessarily, I have something that's just my baby, and I think that's important for sure. What would you do differently if you were graduating now? It's a very, very good question. I would definitely be more and more active on social media than I was, because that's the king today. It's all about social media, but being the right message, of course. I would leverage. I would say I probably wouldn't necessarily go into corporate. I would probably start my own company. I'm biased now because I've done it, but I will say, having worked in corporate for the last 5 years, Estée Lauder, I was at Burberry, and then I was at Dior. They've been incredible experiences, good for my name, but they haven't necessarily made me a better entrepreneur. They've made me better at business, at work, but I have learned the most in my entire life in the last year being on my own, working for my own company. It's been scarier because it's my own money, it's riskier, but the benefits are so much more. And then all your heart, blood, sweat, and tears goes to working for your own baby. It's not someone else's baby. And maybe it's selfish, but for me, I feel like the best satisfaction is working for something that, is yours. Or if you're not ready yet, you don't have the idea, work for someone where you're very much respected and you're high up. So at Dior, I was very close to my CEO, and I felt like I was part of the big company. So that's why I stayed for 3 years. But at Estée Lauder, I was very junior. I was still very small. I wasn't heard. And all my blood, sweat, and tears was going, no one was hearing them. So that's why it didn't last very long. But I think, if you can find a company that really values you, puts you in big meetings, and, even the smaller the company, the better sometimes, that's just as good. But eventually try to maybe potentially have a goal to have your own business, because I think a world full of entrepreneurs will make the world 10 times more exciting and innovative place. And I say this because today, young entrepreneurs, they're considered, like Wall Street Journal put an article to say young entrepreneurs are an endangered species. There are less and less young entrepreneurs than before. And we might be saying, but that's not right. But that's true, because imagine 20, 30 years ago, all the businesses today were entrepreneurial ideas. Now they're big Amazons, they're Facebooks, but before they were small companies. And today, the problem why entrepreneurs are struggling is because there's a risk of failing. There's too many competitive ideas in the market. Everyone is doing something that's been done. There's the financial problem of not having enough money to invest in. There's so many drawbacks and offenses. But to me, I think, those are always going to be scary, and they've always been there in some form. The reason why Amazon, Facebook are today successful is because they knew that there were fences, but they figured out how to jump over them. For me, there's always a way. Money. There's always money. There's always, if they have a good idea, you can get an investor. Failing. If you switch failing to become a success, you'll be more excited about it. Competitive ideas. Maybe there's something that's been done 100 times, but maybe you'll be the one that does it better, right? It's how you change your mindset to deal with those fences and make them more easily to jump over. Very, very important.
So I also had one question.
Please.
In entrepreneurship, there's a lot of risk involved. And as like, if I speak about myself, I don't like taking much risks. So how should we deal about that? Like one day your product is working, the other day it's not. So what should we do about that?
Very good question. I think it's again that mindset of making sure that you have, you know, the risks. You have to be a mixture of very smart. You know, you have to tactically reduce those risks as possible. And when they come, you got to be reactive to reduce those risks. You have to obviously first analyze those risks factors and make sure you're preparing for them earlier on, because damage control is a bit harder when it's in the heat of the moment. But if I know, for example, my risk, for example, with Fable and Mane is someone could have an allergic reaction. Okay, touch wood today, no one has that. But if it comes, I should deal with it now, figure out the response and the system and my insurance now. So when it does come, the risk is mitigated, right? So I think first analyzing the risk, then having a strong call to action way of working to mitigate them. And then third, if you can't control and they just happen and nothing can be done, making sure your mind is strong enough to be reactive, to bounce back, overcome it, and move on. And it's important today, unfortunately, we live in a world where there are more and more problems that are going to occur because we can't even control it. I'll give you an example. There's Instagram. You know, right now there's a Black Lives Matter movement. Many brands were called out because they weren't didn't have many Black employees. After a while, there's not much some brands can do, but they're already going to have a risk now, but there's nothing that they can control because maybe they live in a country where there are no Black employees, or there's certain things that they can't control. Also, this whole social media where it's so quick to grow as it's so quick to fall. One person can say, oh my God, I hate this brand, never use Fable and Mane again. And then your whole company goes down. So there are things that you will just have to be maybe resilient to and not listen to, but just move forward and be yourself. But hopefully that answers it in terms of, first, best advice is to address them, think about them, and figure out ways to mitigate them before they even happen. Another question which I think is really cool is, what's my biggest failure and what did you learn from it? So I'll be really honest, my biggest failure, and if you asked me about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I would have been very ashamed to admit this, but I kind of touched on it a bit before, was I did fail in Imperial. I failed 2 or 3 exams and I had to retake it. But because I wanted to get a better grade, I took the whole year again. And I think at that time, to imagine all my friends were going to the year ahead, I was staying a year behind. I was a study bug. So for me, if I didn't get 95%, I would be very upset. So for me to get like 39% and fail was like quite hard. And that was, I think many people, maybe you have the same where you don't get the grades that you want, or, you get disappointed. Remember, like, yes, grades are important. And yes, making sure you don't fail is important, but you can also use these opportunities to make you even stronger, right? Like I use my failure as, it was a horrible time in my life where I was a little bit depressed, wasn't sure what my future was, because at that point I was like, wow, engineering is not for me. What do I do now? Do I start from beginning? Do I continue this degree? What do I do in life? I don't know what I want to do in life, right? But I managed to say, okay, Akash, only I can control it. The one thing I learned from that failure was I wasn't necessarily good at engineering. So the natural answer was do what you're good at in life, because if you do what you're good at, you will succeed and the failures will be less. So now looking back, I went back to university, I finished my degree, and then I decided to never touch engineering and never again in my future. But now, without that experience, I would probably be working in a bank right now, not speaking to you guys, and probably quite upset and sad, just working 24 hours a day. So I will tell you now that failure was the biggest success in my life, because I made it a success now. So today I would not change it for the world. But at that time, I wish I would have changed it. But so it's how you react to it is very important. And it happens for a reason. Failures happen for a reason, for sure. Which people have had the most influence on your growth and why? It sounds cliche. There are obviously people in the industry, like from mindfulness, my godfather, Deepak Chopra, he's a very good family friend. He's taught me everything with mindfulness. For entrepreneurship, I look at, budding on like Jeff Bezos and, Mark Zuckerberg. I look at those big entrepreneurs and see what they've done. But the biggest inspiration in my life is my dad. I'm fortunate enough where he has a big business and I can learn from that. And I always call him every day and ask for advice. And if you don't have someone in your immediate family that you can do that, try to find someone that you have a connection with to be your mentor. I think having mentors are very, very powerful. I think they can really help. And I also invite people here listening that if you need a mentor, feel free to email me at any time. I am someone who has been given a lot in my life, and it sounds really weird to say, and I'm only 26, but I feel like I've lived a lot of my life, and I'm very content where I am today. I've achieved enough things from me in my vanity goals that I had when I was young. You know, we all want to get certain awards and jobs, and I realize now that that's very important, but it didn't change my life. You know, it's just a vanity goal. So now I no longer have any of these goals because I'm a lot more mindful. But all I think about right now is how many people have helped me in my life to get to where I am. And there are many people out there who haven't got those opportunities. And it just takes some people to just realize, like, I can help people without any expectation. I don't want anything back from anyone. But if I can help you with a 5-minute call or an email or connection to someone or helping you get a job, it costs me nothing. It costs me just half an hour of my time. But if I can help you, that's what I'm willing to do. So I'm absolutely telling you guys, like, feel free. And you can go to Fahira and get my email after. Like, I am available for advice personally, because I know a lot of the times people don't have that someone. And that's something I am very much open to. And of course, right now it's the perfect time because I don't have that many people emailing me every day. So maybe later in a year when I have 10,000 emails, it might be harder. But for now, I can definitely help. So that's something I would definitely say, have mentors in life. And ideally someone close to you that you know and you trust, for sure. There's a few more questions. Do you have any other questions, Farah, or should I just continue?
Yeah, you can continue.
Okay. How do we maintain a work-life balance in the whole process of growing? Very good question. Honestly speaking, I don't call it work-life balance anymore. I call it my life-life balance, because work is my life. I love work. I'm no longer working, you know, I'm growing. So the balance is, unfortunately, I do spend, probably in your ideal way of saying working, I probably spend 95% of my day working. I wake up at 8:30, and I work until sometimes 1 a.m. It's just my life. I haven't really left my room, and I just work. I have moments where I watch Netflix, or my friends will come over for dinner, and that's absolutely fine. But I get to situations now where I go out for dinner and I'm literally sitting there and I'm like, I would rather be on my laptop building my business. Like, that's more exciting to me than going to the cinema or going to the bowling. So if you can get to that point where you know that it's like, that's what makes me happy, then that's what I want to spend most of my time doing, right? I don't need to force myself to go to the cinema and actually sit there bored, because now I've changed where that's my new fun. It might change. But I think also, to help your work-life balance, fitness and meditation has been the biggest impact for me. I always put 1 hour of my day. I have my little bicycle there. I always do cycling, and I always do some workout, 1 hour a day, because that's good for your body, your mind, your strength, your energy. And meditation is very important. And one tip for meditation, if you don't know how to meditate, because it can be quite complicated. I'm someone who normally, when I used to sit there, I used to just think. And I was always like, why am I thinking? Isn't meditation about not thinking? For me, it's about learning how you can meditate in different places. But all it is focusing on one specific thought or one specific dot. So what I do in my head, I think of a tunnel, and I think of a dot at the end of the tunnel, and I just go down that tunnel in my head, and I just keep on going in that tunnel until I get to the dot. And as that's my only focus, I start to take out other thoughts, and that's how I meditate. And I do that maybe 10 to 15 minutes a day, and it calms my mind and it clears my energy, so I don't have to have always so many things in my head. And I think it's very important to do that, to have that balance. How you get to know you are interested in beauty cosmetics? So I think as a human, we are interested in many things. Like tomorrow, if you ask me, what business would you create? I would create a vegan restaurant. I would create a skincare line. I would love to create a theme park. There's so many businesses I would love to do. And that's important to know with businesses. You don't have to just do one thing for life. You can do the second business with another industry. But also to know, like, you don't have to put a weighting. It can be, so as long as you enjoy it, that's important. for me, I chose beauty because my father was in the beauty industry. So for me, I had some knowledge, I had some experience, and I had a mentor that would, support me and know the industry, the right labs, the right investors, etc. Maybe if I went to a vegan restaurant, it would have been like a complete new industry, and I would have just had to start from really the beginning. So I think using your leverage, your contacts and your database and the people you know and your skill sets that are surrounded by you is an important factor, because it gives you a leg up, And in business, I always say, if you can get like a silver spoon, or you get a little bit of help, take it and make it into a platinum spoon, make it bigger, make it better, because you're lucky enough to get that opportunity, right? And I think that's very important to know. But yeah, I think it was just because of my father that I got into the industry. But I love the industry. It's a great industry. And yeah, you become more and more in love with it as you start building it and working in it. I never knew I would love hair care, but now I love hair care. So you see, it just happens. What's the one thing entrepreneurs should be doing but aren't? The one thing they should be doing is not obsessing about revenue and money. It's important. You can hire someone to do that, like your finance person. Let them obsess about it. But you should focus on the mission, the story, and your journey and your learning. Because if you start thinking, most entrepreneurs today, unfortunately, they start because they say, I want to make $1 million business. How do I do that? So they start with this. And there are many books that are unfortunately causing this. And many speakers, like, this Gary Vee and all these people, they talk about these 7 steps to get $1 million and this and that. And I think that's the problem about entrepreneurship, is because these are false and these are not true. And the most successful businesses today shouldn't be profitable from day one. You should be reinvesting it back into the business and making it grow even further. So, look at Dior. They might make, let's say, X amount of billion, and then they spend the same amount to grow it. So, it's not necessarily like it's, it's not about the business. It's not about the money. It's about the longevity of it, the sustainability of it, and the branding and the messaging. And that's the first thing the entrepreneur should think about, not the money, but hire someone who cares about the money to just at least put you in the right direction. But if you think about both, you're going to overpower the money, and then all your decisions will be based on financial. And then it becomes very hard to grow and to be authentic. And that's one of my advice. It's my opinion. It might be wrong, but that's what I do personally. Oh, this is a very interesting question. The future is automation. Machines are coming in every field. What's your take on it? Should we focus more on that, or look in between until the time comes? I think we should look in between until the time comes. Don't obviously build a business that's completely built upon the idea that it could be replaced by automation, right? Because then you'll just be taken out of the industry. I think if you can leverage automation, machines, because we know that they're here to stay, and use it to increase the productivity of the business and the cost of the business, then that's a very good idea. But I still think we're still quite away from it. There are some companies like Tesla and stuff that are doing far ahead of the curve, but most people love that human touch. And we might get a 360 very soon, where people want that artisanal, handcrafted. They don't necessarily want machines to do everything. So I would say look in between, not necessarily the other or the or. Another person said, who will you prefer to hire? Like a freelancer working for themselves, but built his own team, or somebody who has a good company name and grades? For me, 100% a freelancer who's built a good name for himself, good contacts, good team, 100%. I can say, in being in corporate, I was probably one of the only entrepreneurial people that built their own team within like a company. I built new projects. 95% of people in big companies, they just come in for a job and they just do the job. And they say, I'm not being paid more than that, so I'm just doing this. So they just repeat. They just basically are like a bit like a machine. They just do work, right? They're not really growing. They don't really learn. They just do the same thing every year. And then it becomes the same thing. I would liken it to this, because many companies say you've got to work 3 years before you get promotion. So think of it like this. When you're hiring someone from university, would you hire someone who's done the same degree for 3 years, the same course? Or would you hire someone who's done loads of small degrees, but loads of different industries and their own? You would hire someone who's done a lot of small degrees in different industries, because they've learned more, they've done more. And it's the same as work. When you work for a company for 3 years and you're in the same role, you're just repeating the year, right? You're just doing the same job year after year. That actually can be damaging to an entrepreneurial, and they get lazy, they don't work hard enough, they don't become innovative. So for me, for sure, I really value like freelancers and people who are like mini entrepreneurs and hustle their own way, for sure. And that's what I will be hiring for my company too. Absolutely. To excel in the business environment, one needs to have a good team around you. Would you suggest that we look into building a team? Absolutely. I made sure I hired a strong team before. I wanted to have a diverse team. I wanted to have women empowerment. So my team are, amazing ladies that are just really inspiring as individuals. They're not necessarily all the most experienced. They're very, very young. We're all under 30. I'm in my team. But I'm more friends with my team than their boss. And I think that's what makes it successful. I'm obviously very fair, and I put rules, and I'm the one paying their salary at the end of the day. So they have that sense of, there's a sense of distance in that. But I'm definitely like a friend and first, and I would always put them before the company if they needed to be. So that's a nice way to sort of make sure you have a team that you can trust, and that they also will always give more to you because they have that sense of further than a business relationship. And I think that's because business for me isn't business, it's my life, So I've made my work a bit personal. So it has to have a personal connection with my employees. And maybe it's because I've worked in corporate enough where I've seen teams that don't work together, bad bosses. I've had many bad bosses. I've had bosses that, would count my mistakes, would tell me like, you can't take a day off. If I got invited to a big meeting, she would tell me, I don't know why you're invited in this meeting. You're too young to be in this meeting, like my own boss. So I think having had such hard experiences with bad bosses that I've learned to be a better boss, if that makes sense. And I've understood the importance of having the right team and managing the team well. So I think it's a very good idea, but obviously being smart about timing. Don't hire too many too quickly because it's a bit of a cost. And unless your business needs it, hire accordingly. So my biggest learning was don't hire so quickly because you might not need that many people initially. So phase it out and hire once the demand is there. And I think that's very important. So I know because of timing, do you have any other questions, Fahira, or are we?
Have we answered? Yeah, there's one question left, I think.
Yeah. There's
there are always some ideas of business in everyone's mind. This one.
Where is that one? Oh, do you want to say it to me? I can't read it. Where is it?
It's from.
Oh, here, I got it.
Yeah.
There were always some ideas of businesses in everyone's mind, but the problem occurs while executing it or arranging funds for it. So what should we do to overcome that? So I think my biggest advice is in business is always invest your own money. Don't dilute yourself too quickly if you cannot, right? So I initially worked in corporate for a few years to earn my own money to then invest it in my company and my agency. So I earned good salaries at Dior, etc. So I don't have to go to my dad and say, can you give me money? I can do it myself. I don't need to go to a bank either. If you want to start being an entrepreneur from day one and you want to not and you don't want to work for a company, so then it's a matter of, okay, I don't have any money, but how do I start my business? There's a couple of ways. One way is friends and family funding, a low interest rate. So you go to your friends and family, you ask little by little, you prove slowly by concept, you return the money, you do the next, you can build it slowly from loans, but with your friends and family. Second is grants. There are a lot of organizations that are supporting entrepreneurs. So, for example, someone will donate $10,000 for your business, and they don't expect anything back. It's just like a donation. Grants are very successful. And a lot of my friends who are starting businesses have raised many grants that many banks are giving, especially to women in women empowerment. And there are a lot of fields where, diversity and stuff that you can get grants. And then the third is obviously then getting an investor. If you need a strategic partner, I would look for an investor who becomes an equity stakeholder. So then they're giving money in exchange for equity, no loan. And then they give their value in the company. If you're looking at, I don't need anyone, I have all my ideas, but I just need an investor for money, then go to either a bank or an investor at a minimal interest rate. You don't want to be paying more than 8% per year at a small business. And those are really the only main options for funding if you can't fund it yourself. But I think in that order of priority would be the first step. And the good thing to know is there's always a way to get funding. So something I'm looking at right now is to do some micro loans and micro funding for small businesses. So stay tuned for that. Still got to figure out the ins and outs, but I want to support local businesses as well, like grants. So it's something I'm thinking about as well. So hopefully there'll be people, other entrepreneurs who will help new entrepreneurs as well. That could be also a great option. So yeah, I think that's most of the questions answered. If anyone's got any last questions, feel free. If not, if you have,
I wanted to ask one more.
please.
So yeah, talking about women entrepreneurship and women, like how difficult is it for, I know you're not the ideal person to answer this question right now, but how difficult does it get for women in the corporate world?
So I think it really depends on where you are, like which country. I think in the UK, it's a lot better than in, like, say, France, or in the USA, it's very good. Maybe in India, I don't think it's as good as, like, for example, USA and UK, because of history, and it's unfortunate. I think it's up to I think it's really up to yourself to be, like, pushing it and adamant to it. I would say I've seen too many big companies where the top is just, in a very frank way, old white men. I was one of the only people of color at these big companies, and there's the angle of people of color, and there's also the angle of women, and there's also the angle of women of color. So there's a big debate and there's topic to be done on that. It's moving very quickly. In this side of the world, there are certain rules being put in place, and regulations and minimum requirements and diversity boards in place. But I also think it's about using that unfortunate situation right now where there is a huge disparity, and there is a problem, to motivate, if you are a woman or a woman of color, to say, I'm going to do more to prove the industry. And I want to get to a point where they're going to beg for me to work for the company and to be a CEO, right? That's what I did. Coming to a company where I was the only Indian, the only colored person, I was like, I'm going to make sure that they value the power of Indians, and that I have to work. I don't have to work, but I want to work just as hard to make sure that they don't underestimate me because I don't speak, say, French, right? I wasn't white. And I think then by letting the work speak for itself, you'll be surprised what's possible. But I would say, like, you have to be the catalyst of change. If you are in a country that necessarily is a bit behind, don't necessarily say, okay, the solution is moving to America. I would say the solution is right now is being the catalyst to change it in your own country. For sure.
Yeah, my next question was related to that only. Like, people nowadays are like just looking for moving abroad for jobs. They don't want to stay in India and do that.
Yeah.
Like, they want to go to the Gulf or the West. So what would you suggest to those people, and what would you say to that?
So I would say, if you are working for if your dream is for a specific company that is only based in certain areas, like let's say you want to work for Dior, I think yes, you have to move, and you have to maybe go to Singapore, or you have to go to, if you're lucky, to go to France. I understand that, and if that's a very specific goal, then strive for that. If your goal is more generic, I just want to get experience in the industry or this and that, like, right now, it's harder anyway to move countries right now, and get jobs and everywhere in the world. So that's the number one. We've got to be realistic. But two, like, be the catalyst. Yeah, make sure you are the change. And maybe use it as a stepping stone. So maybe you can still go to USA and get experience, but maybe you need a bit more experience here before you end up going. Or you go with the intent to bring it back and make change even further, right? But never lose sight of your roots. Your roots is who you are. For me, that's why I'm doing the whole thing about bringing Indian culture to the West, but I'm not forgetting India. Everything I do is for who I am. Even if I was born in London, I am Indian and proud. So I think that's very, very important to think about. but it's subjective because it's easy for me to say, don't move abroad, you know, stay in your country. But to be honest, for me, moving to Paris was one of the best decisions when I'm now in London, but when I moved to Paris, that's what made me at Dior, right? In the global office. So certain jobs require it. But I will say, I didn't think about Paris. I thought about the job, and the job ended up saying, you got to move to Paris. And then I moved. So doing it that way around is better. Don't necessarily think about, oh, let me first think of USA and then I will move to, then I will get the job. Think of the job. And if the job is interested in you, even if they interview you from anywhere in the world, I got interviewed from London. I wasn't in Paris. Then they said, come to Paris for a day for an interview. And then they said, we want you. We want to make you move. We'll pay for your move. Can you come? That's better, right? Then, for example, my first thought is America. Don't do that. Yeah. Perfect.
We have another question.
Okay, perfect. To excel in the business, no, we've done that one, which is, your favorite ad campaign of current times. Oh, it's a very good question. To be honest, I've been working a lot. I haven't really been on the internet a lot, like on ads and stuff. Current times, I think I really like ads that are all about like online classes, and like, you know, there's a company called Masterclass and things that speak to you at home. So things where it's all about like, you know, targeted for when you're watching it, you react. So for example, you know, you have a few hours at the end of the day. Why don't you learn a new language? Get 6 months free with this app. Those ads really work for me because I feel like they're really relevant. I'm not seeing something that I'm like, oh, you know what? I do have a few hours free in the day. Oh, I do have time. Oh, I'll learn language, you know? So those ads are great. In terms of like big campaigns and like global campaigns, there's not one that's, I mean, I'm not to be biased, but I think Gucci, Dior is obviously the company I was working at, but Gucci Beauty, I really love what they're doing because they're really pushing the boundaries as a luxury brand. They're really showcasing different, not forget diversity of skin types and women and men. They go really far into it with quirky looking, they go for disabled people. It doesn't matter. There's no sense of priority or, you know, opportunistically. They're just basically choosing people that are representing the whole world, you know, and putting them on a platform to say, yes, we're Gucci, but we're inclusive. So brands like that, where I look at it and I feel like, wow, they haven't thought about, oh, our main market is China. Let's think about a face that works in China, or let's think about what will sell the product. They're thinking about, we've got to be as inclusive as possible. And if we lose customers because they don't like it, then they're the customers that we want to have in the future, right? I think that's really great. So Gucci, I would definitely check out and see what they're doing from an inclusive point of view. It's very interesting. Yeah. Great. I think, well, is there any other questions you had? Another question came out. What things should I be careful of if I'm thinking about launching a startup? So I think, you know, going back to some of the points I mentioned, but kind of to summarize those, it would be making sure your idea is truly authentic to you. Do you have an edge to other people? Like, for example, if I was creating a Japanese skincare line, people would say, okay, well, what's your experience with Japan, right? And I think that's important to make sure you have a real affiliation to the brand or the concept or the service, and you have a need. People love that idea when you say, oh, I created Uber. Why did you create Uber? Oh, because growing up, I had no access to taxis. And now, you know, there's a story behind it, which means there was a reason for it. That's number one. Second, the biggest advice in thinking about launching a startup is your finance, for sure. Not during your startup, but in the beginning, to make sure you have a certain finance person involved in the cash flow to start it. You obviously have to be sensible. But then you switch to focus more on the building of the brand and the image and the awareness, and you hire relevant team people to manage those topics, for sure. And then the third idea would be distribution. Where are you going to sell this product or service? Where are you marketing it? Who is your customer? Who is your target? And then the fourth, which many people don't do, is what is your message and your CSI, which is your corporate social intention. I don't like corporate social responsibility because it feels like it's overworked, but your intention is, what are you intending to do beyond just selling, right? For me, with our product, with Fable and Mane, it's to help tigers in India, women education, empowerment, and we've started our mission. So beyond everything, I don't mind if tomorrow no one buys my hair products. I want them to know that there is a problem in India with poaching of tigers. There are more tigers in the US in the garden than in India in the wild. And there's a big problem with the villagers, farmers, and the education with the wildlife. That's our mission, right? So that's my CSI. So having that is very important because today we need to have some sort of deeper meaning and deeper, maybe not necessarily a charity, but a cause behind it, right? What's your cause? Once you have those four things, then you can start the whole journey for sure. And someone asked me, what kind of content do I consume? What am I reading these days? I'll be honest, I'm very honest with everything I do. I don't read a lot. One of my biggest downfalls in life is I get very bored of reading. It's funny because I'm writing a book right now. So it's weird that I'm saying that I don't like reading, but I'm writing a book. And my book is going to be all about entrepreneurship and mindfulness with life lessons. And so hopefully you guys will be able to see it later when it's released later this year. But what I do like reading is a lot of the news. But that doesn't really help me in entrepreneurship. So I would say if you're looking at entrepreneurial advice, the best things I like to do is not necessarily read, because I feel like media can be very subjective and can, it's just the best of what they want to show. Is I pick up the call and I call people that I know and my mentors and I say, what's happening with your business? Your friends and family who've got businesses, learning from them and learning from their successes, their failures, how they're performing, what's doing well, what's doing wrong, is more valuable than any article online, right? So that's what I do. I spend my time doing more calls and getting to know other people's businesses, is what I really consume in terms of content. And also social media. To be honest, I go on Instagram quite a lot and you learn a lot from Instagram. I choose to follow the best accounts that are relevant, I don't just follow Kylie Jenner, I follow others, so then I'm choosing things I want to learn. And YouTube is also very good for that as well. Very, very good. And someone asked me, if you were not an entrepreneur, what would your second option be? If I was not an entrepreneur, which I think would be very unlikely, but if I wasn't, I would probably stay in corporate and work for a big company. I would want to be in a leadership board. I would want to be very high up in the COMEX and the corporate committee, making change. So sort of being like an entrepreneur, but for someone else, and having the stability of a good income, good name, is definitely something that I did have at Dior and I liked it. So probably what I would be doing. I would love to say being a singer, but I just don't think anymore I'm as good as I was. So I think I got to say goodbye to my music. But yeah, I think I would go back to corporate for sure, which is, I loved it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing at all. And then someone said, how should fresh startups strategize for advertisement? I think for this one, it's also being mindful how you're advertising. There are many forms of advertising today. You have your ads, you have your social ads, your Google ads, you have your billboards, you have your press, you also have influencers, you have word of mouth, you have also email. There's so many funnels. Some cost less than others. I think it's important to first understand from your startup, what is your product and your service, and therefore, what is the most suitable avenue for that? For example, if you are a restaurant, you might want to invest in some billboards near the restaurant so people are walking and can see it. If you are a skincare brand, you might want to invest in influencers for advertising because they show efficacy by trying the products and they review it. So that's important. But I also think it's important to have a kind of consistent budget month on month. And that's where your finance person and you can talk together and understand, okay, how much am I investing? What's my customer acquisition? So A/B test with small pots of budget until you get to a point where you've got enough data to validate, okay, let's increase our budget for advertising by 10 times more. But analyze that data to know your customer acquisition. So if I'm spending $10 on an ad and I'm getting a customer who's spending $100, then what is my customer acquisition, right? Is it $10 to get a customer for $100? So it's very important to know that. And then also understanding that, is it effective? Because if I'm getting a customer for $10, but they're only spending $10, then it's still not effective, right? So what is the average order value or the commitment to buy? So I think, yeah, figuring out the placement of the advertising, the budget, and then measuring the success of it is very important each month, because you're going to be turning it on and off. You're going to be changing strategies each month. Very important. How do you feel about TikTok? What is the future of it? Okay, I'm not saying I'm old, but like I'm a little bit like, I feel older now than before. So TikTok, I feel, is very much like now the new generation. I do go on it sometimes. I think it's great. I think for me personally, I know my message is not the right platform necessarily yet. Maybe if there are more entrepreneurs going on it, but I can't share something in 10 seconds. I got to speak to someone for longer. It's a bit more, I want to be a bit more meaningful. I think there's also the point of TikTok being a platform for fun, bite-sized content, dances, music. Before it was Musically, which was a singing platform. So we have to remember where it came from. I think many brands and people today feel that they need to go to platforms for the sake of it because it's the trending platforms, but they don't think about what's out there right now. Like, are you going on LinkedIn? Are you strong enough on LinkedIn? Are you strong enough on Pinterest? That you might find your business has more sense there. But it's also very important for me to understand that I did this analysis the other day on my digital course I'm doing, that Facebook is still the most used social media platform today, followed by, then you have like YouTube, and then you have Facebook Messenger, then you have WhatsApp, then you have Instagram, and then you have like TikTok. So TikTok is like quite low down. I think it's like number 8 or 10 or something. So it's still not that much used in reality. There are more consumers right now on it who are younger, but they're not necessarily going to purchase your startup or buy your product. So I think the future is definitely strong, but I think the more and more brands try to play in there and try to dilute the messaging and try to make it like a brandable, shoppable experience, the more it will be like Vine, where it will just be oversaturated and then they're no longer an exciting platform to use. So let's see, but I'm not sure necessarily. And someone asked me, was there a time you wanted to quit and how did you deal with the situation? There are many times I want to quit. I mean, there's just last week I wanted to quit my agency and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And I think, it's normal. I'm human. I'm not trying to say I'm perfect by any means in my businesses. I have make mistakes. I want to quit sometimes, but that's where the mindfulness comes in, where I'm very quick at reacting to it. So how I react to it is, if I'm really in the element and I'm really upset and I say, forget mindfulness, I just don't want to do this anymore. I then say, sleep on it. Take a moment, just breathe, don't make a decision now. Then after a sleep, I would assess it again. And if I still feel the same, then it's okay to sometimes quit to move forward, right? Like in a way, I quit my idea of engineering and it made me stronger, right? So I think just making sure you're really taking that decision, hopefully, like mindfully, making sure you're making it strongly, not with emotion, but with common sense is very important. But how I deal with it is just, like really taking that time to understand, is it right for me right now? And can I overcome it? If I can't, can I get help? And if I can't get help, then maybe yes, the only resort is to quit. But yeah, that's how I deal with it pretty much mainly. What do you think about blockchain usage in businesses? Okay, I'm not the best to answer that. Like I know my weaknesses and my strengths, and I think many people are using it well, but for me, I don't want to say something that I don't necessarily A, understand that well, and B, use. So yeah, I'll skip this question because I'll be saying something wrong, but I don't use it. I mean, I don't think it's not necessarily important today. I think you can do stuff without it, but many people have found success in it. So it's a subjective question. How do you control your anger or irritation if the things are not planned perfect as you plan? If your things are not going to plan? Honestly, I just accept always things will never really go to plan. So if you have that mindset from the beginning, then you'll never really be that upset, right? Because you're planning for it. Again, it's this whole mindfulness, it's meditation. You breathe, you take a moment, you take a step away, you go for a walk. You take moments away from that self, you calm yourself down, and then you refer back to it. But always, in any heated moment, when you're angry, even when I'm with a client, for example, and there's a heated conversation, say less if you have nothing positive to say. If it's just negative and anger, don't say anything, because you'll end up regretting it most of the time, because in the heat of the moment, you'll say things you don't mean. better to don't say anything or just agree and be like, okay, yeah, I'll come back to you, no problem. Yeah, I'll think about it. And that's okay, you know? But by reacting on that anger, usually it causes more problems than ever. So I always feel like there's been so many moments where I've had such an unfair conversation with a client and I get heated and I want to say, this is not fair, you're being disrespectful, this is not right. But I end up never saying anything. And then the next day I'm always like, thank God I didn't say anything. Like, thank God, you know? So definitely say less is more when you're angry and take a moment away. Another last, I think, yeah, one question goes, how did you know when you had the right idea? You never will know you have the right idea. As long as you feel like it's a success in the moment, it's the right idea. It's important to know businesses will always be changing. The idea will change as the industry changes. Right now, for example, hair care, I think it's a great idea. Let's say in 10 years' time, everyone is bald and it's the new normal and hair, there's a disease in hair and you're now all told to shave your head. Then obviously it's a wrong idea, the business. So you have to just accept that ideas can kind of fluctuate in their concept. But as long as you're seeing, the numbers are working, the sales are there, the interest is there, the feedback is there, the reviews are there, the customers are happy in your service or your product, then you know it's a good idea. Nothing more to be said. Definitely. Great. Seeing if there's... Why are there not enough brands on podcasts talking about their domain? Very good question. Brands, I think, are a bit scared as well, the bigger brands, to kind of go further into it. They often rely on other people. They wait until another big brand does it. And what ends up happening is no brands do it. And then they're just not doing it. So I think brands are a little bit scared about doing that. And also they don't have necessarily, many brands today, big ones, don't have authentic stories or don't have the right message to say. So by going on things like that, they expose themselves to actually realize that they're not actually that sustainable or that authentic, etc. So I think the newer brands who are built in this way are definitely on podcasts and they're definitely, you know, out there sharing their domain and their messaging because they have enough to say. But I think there's a lot of, industry scaredness to kind of go that further because it's a very public forum. And also it takes an individual, like a brand person, to be publicly there, not like Dior or a company. It will be like Akash Mehta. So that's definitely something why they're a bit hesitant initially. Great. So I think that's all the questions. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Let me mute you and unmute you. I don't know. I can't hear you. Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Now I can
Now?
hear you. Perfect.
Yeah. So I had one last question. If you're done with all the questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was that is it ideal to work for startups or for full grown companies?
I would say today it's more ideal to work for startups because it's easier to get in the startups. Full-grown companies are a little bit more harder. Also, full-grown companies, if you're starting at an entry level, you usually will start very, very low, and then it will take a lot of time, usually, to grow quicker. I was fortunate where I skipped many levels at an early age, so I was experienced to a lot more. I got to travel, I got to do everything, but a lot of people don't get that chance. And I would say if I was in those companies as a junior manager for 3 years, I wouldn't see the value personally. You know, so if you're able to work for a big company and be at a higher position at a young age, go for it. If not, work for a startup first, get experience, get a title that's good. Because usually these big companies that want a good title to then say, oh, you are a manager? Okay, you'll be manager again. If you want a manager, if you're an intern, then it's hard for them to justify you as a manager, right? That's the same with Estée Lauder. I was a manager at Estée Lauder. And then when I went to Dior, there was like, oh, you're already a manager? You'll go higher. You can't go lower. And that's basically why I was like, great, this is a kickstart in the industry, right? So if you want to get a kickstart, start a startup first, get a good title. Don't worry about the pay, but get a good title, and then make your career choices from there. Yeah, I would say that's the best advice for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Any other questions? Is there any other Q&A?
Oh, I think we're done with the questions.
Great.
Does anyone has any more questions they can ask?
Well, like I said as well, like you can, feel free to message the students, whoever is interested, that they can always contact me on Instagram or email for any extra advice, and I'll be sure to get back to them with my opinions if there's something specific or private they want to ask. When it comes to connections, and a lot of people the main thing they will say is, okay, can you help me get a job? I can't get a job, right? My biggest advice would be, because that's something that even I can't guarantee, it's very hard, is it's normal to apply to 200, 300 places and get one offer. It's okay. I did the same, number one. Two, leverage your connections that you have immediately, that someone who might know someone. If you're asking one of your friends or family for help, be specific. Don't say, hi, I'm interested in working in digital marketing. Can you help me with anyone you know? Be instead, hey, I want to work for Apple India. Can you connect me with someone in the digital marketing team or anyone you know? Because when it's specific, then that person can actually ask tentatively, like all their friends, to say,
Yeah.
This is actually a specific request. Do you know anyone in Apple? And then it's a lot quicker and a lot more specific. That helped me a lot. I knew I wanted to work in either Estée Lauder or Dior or whatever. So it helped me. So don't be as vague in terms of your decisions. Even if you don't know if that's the right company, if you're going to ask people prefer when it's more specific, because then they can action it better. And be active on LinkedIn, DM people, find other avenues. If you found the person who works in Vogue and you're interested in working in Vogue, DM them on Instagram with their CV. There are ways you can be a bit more different than just the traditional CV approach. Today we have to be a little bit smart and a little bit like cheeky in how we market ourselves, because it's a very cutthroat, saturated industry, right?
Yeah.
But for sure, the one thing I know I can definitely help with initially is guidance, opinions on like if it's the right path, and also your CV. I'm very good at looking at a CV and assessing it and making sure it's strong. So feel free as well. If you want some advice on CV, I can definitely help.
We have one last question. So
Perfect. Is it ideal to launch a business while doing a job in some other company? Oh, absolutely. As long as you can do your 100% in that company and they don't question it, no problem. I went to my CEO and I said, I want to start my own company, but I'm going to still work for Dior, but let me do both and I'll make sure I can do both. But I'm just letting you know, I was very open. And it worked out great because I even got some advice during my time there, and it was great. I would say it's actually some of the best idea you can do. If you can, then you have a stable income, you have your job where you learn, and you also start working slowly on your business. And you should only then quit once your business is strong enough to say, wow, it's about to be full-time. I have to spend 99% of my time on it. Let's go. Because at the beginning of creating a company, you have a lot of spare time because, waiting for example, certain things like, waiting for the retailer or the whoever, it depends what your product is. But let's say your product is skincare, waiting for the labs to come back with the samples, with the formulas, waiting for the logos to be perfect, waiting for the website to be made, which can take 2 months, waiting for the retailers to sign and email you back. There is a lot of just emails initially, but not a lot of like, you have to be patient. There's a little bit of a process. So it could take up to a year, 8 months, 6 months, minimum 6 months to a year to create the business to an entirety where you're ready with a product more or less. So if you can work for a company and do it on the side and just sleep a few hours less and, you know, work from 6 p.m. till 11 p.m. every day, do it. Because that's what I did. And that's what I ended up being able to do a lot in my short time after graduating. Yeah. And it's fun, you know, you will love working and building your own company. So for you going home after work, you won't feel like you're working. You'll be like, oh, I'm excited to like work on that. Definitely. It's a very good question. And I think it's a good idea, but it's not easy to do that because you've got to then get the job and you got to also have the idea, right? So both of those are quite, a bit, it's not impossible. I did it, but it's a little bit harder.
Yeah. So we're done with the questions. Akash, would you like to add some key notes at the end of this seminar?
Yeah, my advice would be you're all very fortunate to be at an incredible university and have met amazing, you know, your colleagues and your cohort. Definitely make sure after university that you don't lose touch of that and you keep in touch with people who are similar to you. My best friends and my best mentors have been people I've met during university. When it comes to your career, make sure you make decisions about what's best for you as a person, not society, not your family, yourself first, because I guarantee you, once you have success in yourself, everyone else, your family, your society will end up being more proud and more happy. Work really hard. I slept very little at the beginning, 4 hours, 5 hours a day maximum. But I didn't complain because I loved it. So you need to put in the work, you need to put in the hours, and you got to be smart. Utilize your connections well. Find connections where you didn't think you had them. We live in a world where who you know helps you, and we can't be naive to that. So use it gracefully and help you propel yourself further. And if people want help and you can give them help because it will repay you back in some form, but never expect back. Always give from your heart. In business, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you can always be an entrepreneur in 1 year, 10 years, 20 years. So there's no rush until you have the right idea and the right authentic story to tell and the finances behind it. So you can always start a bit later or start slowly on the side until you're ready. So you can even work on a business for 5 years until you're ready to launch it. It doesn't matter. But don't be obsessed with names and big Dior names and stuff. It's very not the future anymore. It's working for yourself, working for small startups. It's where you can learn the most that matters. Think of now when you graduate, you are on your second degree, your third degree, your fourth degree. Your life is full of learning and you never will stop learning. So make sure that you don't lose sight of that. And lastly, find yourself good mentors. Always, feel free to reach out to me and other people. And don't be so quick to leave India. There's so much greatness to be done there and easier to be done there because maybe it hasn't been done yet. So if you can be the first to catalyze that change, do it, and that was my biggest advice I could say.
Yeah. So with that, we have come to an end to this webinar. Yeah, I would like to thank Akash for joining us today here for the webinar and giving some amazing tips and enlightening us with his expertise. It was an honor for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, thank you for organizing this and for giving me the opportunity. Really.
Yeah. And I also want to thank our director, sir, Mr. Faisal KP, for guiding us and for supporting us. I would like to thank my convener of the webinar, Mr. Shafiqur Rahman, for supporting me throughout the process. And I would like to thank all the participants here who joined and asked some wonderful questions. It was really interesting. So yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining in.
Thank you, everyone. And yeah, thank you, everyone, so much from the bottom of my heart. And we'll be in touch.
Yeah, I hope we stay connected, Akash.
Absolutely. Always happy
Yeah.
to.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.